Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Gorilla Poker, and in this video we're going to be reviewing a hand played between LLinusLLove and Barak Wisbrod on WPN Network. 100, 200, 20k buy-in, interesting hand, so yeah, let's get into it. At the end of the hand we'll do a short PioSOLVER analysis. So Llinus raises the button to 2.5x standard size, Barak defends the big blind. Jack 6-7 two-tone board, Barak checks, and Llinus c-bets for a big size. Now, very often we've been seeing small sizes, and I've been saying this indicates the guy is likely c-betting close to his full range. The reasoning behind a bigger size here, among other things, is there are so many draws for the out-of-position player that by making a small c-bet size, you kind of let him off the hook, and that he just has easy time realizing his equity with a lot of his range, and this size makes it tougher for him. But yeah, there are a lot of nuances to choosing sizes. I think the main thing to understand is when you face a size that this is going to be, more polar, so more good hands and bluffs rather than everything in between. You're never going to see fives. You're not going to see many 6x, 7x, pairs between 8s and 10s. All of these are going to be discounted, or hands like ace, king, ace, queen, ace, 10. Much more polar. Hopefully you guys are familiar with that concept. And yeah, Barak goes for a check raise. Now, how do you check raise against a polar range? You have to go with a more polar check raise. So for example, check raising king jack might not make much sense against a polarized range. It's probably a very rare to non-existent play, but certainly your 2-pair plus are good enough to go with, and you want to put in money with that range along with various other categories of hands. So have a call, turn 5 of hearts, and whenever we see a turn in a check raise pot or in any pot, we ask ourselves, who is the turn good for? And in this instance, the turn is probably one of the best turn cards in the deck for Barak Wisbrod. 8-9 now makes the nuts. Some of the hands that check raise probably 6-5 or 7-5, maybe 8-4, or even something like 5-8, 5-9. All of these hands have improved. So really, really good card for Barak's range. Generally, draw completing cards and low cards are good for the check raiser, whereas high cards and board pairing cards are more good for the caller, as a general rule of thumb. Barak fires a barrel or almost 80% pot, which he's going to do with a lot of his range. This is a spot where you just keep putting on tons and tons of pressure because so much of your range improved. Llinus decides to go all in. Barak makes the call and we see a showdown, and the showdown here is 8-5 of spades for Barak. So combo draw, check raise, barrel when you turn the pair, and in this instance you could maybe sometimes check with a pair, but I think 5 is just not a card you do much checking on. And it's just an insane combo draw, like you can treat the 5 as you now improve to trips on a 5 and to 2-pair on an 8. So just very, very strong draw. I think the way it's played is very, very reasonable. And Llinus shows up with a hand that might seem strange to you guys, which is Jack-9 off. So putting it into the large bet size, and definitely not every time, but I could see it sometimes. Calling a check raise, always with top pair. And then the question you need to ask yourselves is, should you shove ever versus the turn bet? And if so, which hands make sense to do it? And the turn bet is carrying tons and tons of equity, as we're seeing with hands like 5-8 of spades. You're going to have probably like Queen-8 of spades, maybe 6-8, 7-8, 10-8, tons and tons of draws. So it's a range that makes sense to shove against. But of course, it's not easy to beat the value hands, and the draws have tons of equity and they're still calling. So what would the shoving range look like? What would be the value hands other than the obvious 8-9? And what would be the bluffs? And is Jack-9 a value shove? Is it a bluff shove, or is it something in between? And I think the way this play works is that Jack-9 is kind of it's more of a bluff than a value hand, but it's kind of a bluff that crushes draws. So you're definitely not, like as Llinus, you're hoping for a fold. But Jack-9 has this kind of property where sometimes it will get called by worse. So it's these strange GTO bluffs where, you raise as a bluff, but the guy calls you with worse because, something like this. So yeah, let's look at the sim and we'll see if this fits, if this makes sense. Okay, so Jack 6-7 two-tone, out of position player checks. These ranges are probably a bit different than whatever ranges you guys are using. And we look at Llinus's polarized c-bet. I put only the big size in. And you can see that whereas hands like queens and kings will always be there and ace-jack mostly, Jack-9 is more of a mix. It does not always want to go there. 10s never bets, 5s never bets, ace-10 almost never bets. So kind of the sort of structure I was alluding to, you'll see that like there are exceptions to what I was saying. So queen 6 of spades is a 6 that's betting. A7 likes to bet, but for the most part these low pairs are checking and we're polarizing. So yeah, we bet. Barak goes for the check raise like we said, because it's polarized you cannot go with many weak top pairs. It's mostly 2-pair plus for value. Kind of mix of bluffs around the 4, 5, 8, 9 area. Some of them have pairs. And yeah, 8-5 of spades, definitely full frequency there, which makes sense. And yeah, we have the raise. Llinus, of course, will call every single top pair and over pair in his range. And all the draws, and even float some hands like king, queen, ace, king with a spade. Yeah, we get the 5 of diamonds turn. In terms of how good the turn is, if you hit Control H on PioSOLVER, you can look at EV for out of position, and you can see that this is actually the highest EV turn in the deck. The 5 of diamonds or the 5 of hearts are the best possible turn cards. And if you hit the strategy tab, you can see what your strategy looks like on a turn, and you can see that on this best possible turn, the strategy is kind of bet like 90% of the time, mostly for the big size Barak used, just because so much of your range improves. So Barak, kind of with a no-brainer decision once you understand the spot, but very accurately played, betting the 8-5 of spades. And like we said, he's going to be betting 10-8, he's going to have queen 8 of spades, he's going to have 6-8 and 9-6 and all sorts of hands with lots of equity in addition to his value range. And versus this bet, Llinus should play shoves and calls, folds of course, and you can see some Jack X can start folding because you're drawing very thin at that point, and the fact you have top pair doesn't matter too much. Even Ace Jack can start mixing in folds. But if we want to focus on the shoving range, there's so much equity here for Barak that it makes sense for Llinus to start fast playing. So pocket 7s, 6-7, pocket jacks, fast play. 8-9 actually looks like it's strong enough to slow play in this instance because it doesn't worry about equity as much as some of the other hands, right? Imagine Barak has something with an 8, like 5-8. It's just drawing to chop with 8-9. Whereas versus jacks, it's drawing to the full open-ender. So yeah, 8-9 more of a slow play, fast playing more the 2 pairs and sets. And yeah, what do we bluff with? Or what do we raise other than these hands? So you could go queens or kings. You could go with your own 7-8 type hand, which also would have been a brutal shove for a hand like Barak's, where you have a kind of higher pair plus a draw. And interestingly enough, you can also go with a hand like Jack-9, where the idea with Jack-9 is that even facing the bet, Jack-9's equity is only 50. Once you raise, Barak will fold if he's barreling with Ace-Jack or Jack-10, so a few hands that you beat. And once he calls, if you look at Llinus's equity with Jack-9, it's now dropped to 25, so certainly a bluff, but a bluff that's just denied a lot of equity and also sometimes gotten called by worse. Of course, in this instance versus a shove, Barak would have folded a lot of good straight draws and good flush draws, but certainly not 8-5 of spades or 8-6 of spades like these hands are always calling. So you actually have a pretty perfectly played hand by both players. Very accurate shove to find by Llinus. I think not a lot of people would find this shove. And yeah, one of the things that I think is important when you look at something like this, if I were seeing this, I would be like, this shove is really hard to find. Why is it Jack-9 and not Jack-8? Why is it not 9-7? Even though it is 9-7 sometimes. Like, how do I kind of find this hand? And I think the important thing is not so much the hand as the hand type. And once you say, I want to shove a hand that's gonna beat the draws that are forced to call and have the best equity possible versus them, you kind of start understanding why Jack-9 makes sense. You understand why 7-9 or 7-8 makes sense. And you can also maybe understand why something like pocket 8s or Jack 8 would make sense. And I always ask myself, like, would those have been a really big mistake to shove? So Jack 8 would have been a 1 big blind mistake to shove, and pocket 8s would have been a 1.5 big blind mistake to shove in PioSOLVER. And I think considering the size of the pot is going to be 200 big blinds after a shove and a call, a 1 big blind mistake is very, very small, and it's within reason for the size of mistake you're okay making. So kind of as long as you got the shape correct, I wouldn't fault anyone for shoving any of these hands, and I wouldn't look to be like super accurate, get the correct suits, and get everything perfect like Llinus did. Did he get the correct suits, by the way? Here it says you want heart and diamond, and in the hand itself, Llinus had a diamond and a heart. So, perfect play by Llinus. Really amazing to see. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the hand. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time.